Thank you for joining us for the East Mediterranean Business Culture Alliance's second Nostos and Citizenship for Hellenic Adoptees webinar panel discussion. My name is Luke Katsos, EMBCA's president and founder, and I will be moderating today's discussion. Our distinguished panel includes author, Professor Gonda van Sijn, the Koraes chair for the Center for Hellenic Studies and the Department of Classics at King's College, State Senator of Rhode Island and President of the World Inter-Parliamentary Association, Raptakis, AHEPA Supreme Vice President, Kaitson, Gregory Kontos, the founder of Greekancestry, and author Dr. Mary Cardaras, director of the Demos Center of Athens. The adoption of Hellenic children by foreign families, particularly in the United States, became widespread during the 1950s and 1960s in the aftermath of World War II and the Hellenic Civil War, which took place between 1946 and 1949. Thousands of Hellenic children, often orphans, and those from impoverished families were adopted through organized legal and some more than questionable efforts by international agencies. While this provided many, but not all, children with stability and new opportunities abroad, it also separated them from their Hellenic cultural heritage, language, and identity. As these adoptees grew older, a deep longing for reconnection with their roots emerged, often referred to as Nostos, the Hellenic word for homecoming, linked to the Homeric tradition of longing to return to one's origins. For many, this quest involved rediscovering their familial lineage, reconnecting with the Hellenic language, and seeking Hellenic citizenship as a means of reclaiming their heritage. This pursuit often became an emotional and spiritual journey, encompassing identity, belonging, and cultural reintegration, as well as a current political one. The process of obtaining Hellenic citizenship, difficult in general, for adoptees can be very complex and deeply personal. While modern Hellenic law permits citizenship restoration for citizens or individuals born in Hellas or to Hellenic parents, proving lineage or the circumstances of adoption can present challenges, particularly given some incomplete or inaccessible records from the mid-20th century. Some adoptees rely on DNA testing or archival research to trace their Hellenic roots, often uncovering long-lost family connections along the way. Efforts to support the Hellenic adoptees have gained major traction in recent years due to the work of Gonda, who's with us, and Mary Cardaras and others, with advocacy groups and individuals pressing for streamlining the legal pathways to citizenship. The Hellenic government has indicated that it recognizes the emotional weight of these cases and attempting to assist adoptees in connecting with their homeland. But we are awaiting their stated action in this regard. This quest for citizenship within the diaspora transcends legal status. It symbolizes the return to origins and the reclamation of a fragmented identity. For many Hellenic adoptees, obtaining citizenship is both a practical and emotional culmination of their nostos, affirming their place in the lineage, culture, and history from which they were once removed. As these stories continue to unfold, they highlight the enduring resonance of the Hellenic language and a universal longing for belonging and self-discovery. Today, we will explore the latest news related to citizenship for Hellenic adoptees in this historical and shameful travesty for many who have been attempting to obtain what is their birthright. I'd like to introduce our first panelist today, someone who's very recognized to us. And actually, we have had 4 discussions, even though this is the second one on Nostos and citizenship. We have had 4 discussions with Gonda, who's with us, on the adoptees. If you can, Kostas, just load up a couple of the books that she's written. This is one of them, Adoption, Memory, and Cold War Greece. These are both classics. The other one was translation in Greek. But these are classics, and Gonda has to be complimented, actually, on the work that she's done and the research that she's had. Gonda holds the Koraes Chair of Modern Greek and Byzantine History, Language, and Literature in the Department of Classics at King's College London, where she directs the Center for Hellenic Studies. She is the author of many articles and 6 books. The book most pertinent to this discussion is Adoption, Memory, and Cold War Greece. She has also published an adoption-related play script with a lengthy introduction called Adoption Reckoning for 3 Refrigerators and a Washing Machine, which is forthcoming in 2025, which relates to a play that premiered in London in October of 2024. With Mary Cardaras, Stephanie Pazzolas, and Olympia Anastasopoulou, she is working hard for the campaign that they will aptly call Nostos for Greek Adoptees. Welcome, Gonda, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Lou. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and I want to thank you for your unwavering support for this cause. And I like how you have made issues of the Hellenic diaspora and issues of the diaspora of adoptees central to your mission in life. We really admire that. And I'm also thanking the audience and the fellow panelists because I feel like I'm in especially good company today. Thank you, Konstantinos, for the technical assistance, and I have a few slides with which Konstantinos will be uploading. I'll keep it fairly short because we are 5 voices today. So this is the second Nostos, the second panel related to Nostos, but the Nostos itself is still pending, and that is the cause we want to talk about today. If at any time you in the audience need to find me, please approach me. I have a reputation of being rather accessible. I respond to email if you need anything from me, formally, informally. If you need me to look at your adoption papers, that happens all the time. Please don't hesitate to contact me. And we can move to the second slide. So there have been a few developments. On the 17th of September 2024, Mary Cardaras and I met with Mr. Kyriakos Mitsotakis to bring this issue to the table. We met at the Megaro. We were very well received. We were there with Mr. Livanios and with Katerina Uli from the Citizenship Office. We had an opportunity for Mary to make her pitch, stating what this is all about, how important it is to her, and for me to provide historical context. This was a very dynamic meeting in which Mr. Mitsotakis himself came to the awareness that this is a historic wrong that is still waiting to be corrected. And in these days of justice being a prominent theme, we really need to state that since that 17th September meeting, 4.5 months have gone by. And we find that a little too slow on action, given that for people this is really urgent. Just to give you an example, our friend adoptee Petros is today, on this very day, turning 75. He's from Patras. He's meeting health challenges. He's not the only one. Clearly, this is his biggest wish in life. This issue of being restored to Greek citizenship is his lifelong dream. And we want him to see that result within his lifetime. So we've also been able to give input on some anticipated revisions of the Greek Nationality Code. I'm very well aware, and I want our audience to be aware of the fact too, that the Greek Nationality Code is not something static. Of the 200 years of Greece's history, Greece has had all sorts of modification to this citizenship code. It used to be enough to be on the territory of Greece. Of course, that has now taken a different shape, and now the emphasis on being born of Greek citizens. But that is something the adoptees can prove, and we will get to that in a second. I'll take my next slide, please. I want to show you this absolutely amazing picture that I delved up out of the archives of the ISS in Geneva. These are 5 Greek adoptees being transported on luggage carts through Paris airport in 1965. I want to emphasize that because, first of all, they're not babies. They're not just 1 or 2, they're 5. And secondly, It's 1965. This is not the fallout of the Civil War. This is by now a good 15 years after the Civil War. This movement started in 1950 and continued through 1975. And I think we need to see the sheer magnitude of it to realize just how big this movement is and how important it is for people to get access to their records and get their citizenship restored. And I turn to my next slide. I owe it to you to provide a little bit of historical information. And I do this in the way The Economist does numbers. The Economist has a great way of presenting numbers and kind of making the crucial points stand out by wrapping them around numbers in declining order. So for the next few slides, I'll do just that. So 4,000 then is the number of Greek children sent to the United States in those 25 years between 1950 and 1975. But that doesn't mean only 4,000 are affected. Exponentially speaking, their first families are affected, and of course the adoptive families, not to speak of siblings, villages, aunts and uncles. So this affects a huge number of Greek people to this day. 600 then is the number of Greek children sent to the Netherlands, also between those years, but starting a little later. And I always put in a pitch for the Dutch adoptees because they tend to be forgotten in this big tree. Now, 300 and only maximum 300 is the number of these Greek adoptees who would like to see their citizenship restored, the citizenship that they once had. You will immediately ask me, why is the number not 4,000 or even 4,600? Well, here's the sad part of the story. We have lost very many people and we continue to lose people. Not everyone is alive. Not everyone is interested. Too many have been discouraged. Too many people have been taken for a ride. In the end, only about 300 are actively engaged in pursuing their citizenship. That is, however, never going to cause an electoral landslide, if that is what the government would be afraid of. If 300 people get their citizenship in the most legitimate way possible because they were once Greek, that is hardly, dare I say, a drop in the bucket, but it's an important achievement for those to whom it pertains. On my next slide then. 75 years, people, is the number that these people have been waiting from 1950 to today. And in the case of Petros, that's exactly how old he is. And so we're asking for records, for more research, and most importantly, for that restored citizenship. 20 is the number of memoirs and books that people have been writing to document their own stories. So this is not just a matter of a historian getting interested. This is something that people have carried deep inside, to the extent that people who've never written anything of a magnitude before, to the extent that they feel they have to get this printed and published. The number of published memoirs, books, is now at 20. And I want to make a pitch for that second volume you saw in the slides, the stories collected by Mary Cardaras, 14 testimonies of the Greek adoptees themselves. And in my next slide, 4, only 4, is the number of organizations that actually provide professional access to adoption records. Gregory will talk more about the work that the Hellenic branch of the International Social Service has been doing, digitizing its records and making those available on the request of the adoptees themselves. But since not all adoptions were handled by the ISS, one can only have a file if one's adoption was handled by the ISS. So that leaves a lot of people out. Athens and Patras orphanages also collaborate, and the baby center Mitera, the Kender of Refon Mitera, collaborates more and more over the past few years. But 3 is the number of the organizations that notoriously do not provide access or assistance. And it needs to be stated that includes the AHEPA. The AHEPA was involved in quite a large number of adoptions. I've written about that. I've written extensively about that. I've documented it all. But what I really want to emphasize today is that the AHEPA could be joining us as a large diaspora organization in this movement for a more open-minded conception on dual citizenship, from which AHEPA members and the diaspora at large would benefit. But clearly, we all agree that for the adoptees, this should be expedited. I'm going to put it out there that if the AHEPA wants to see me at their Supreme Convention in July in Orlando, Florida, I'm nearby. I only have to fly, from Texas. I can be there. I can explain this, and I will do it in the most diplomatic way possible. I want to make this information available. I want truth and reconciliation and moving on. And I want the records that are still available to go to the people who are owed to them. So please see this as a collective effort in which we can all join for the greater good. And another slide, please. One is the number of governments, mainly only the Greek government, who should just put this straight. Mitsotakis called it a historical wrong of the past, of the very, very far past. It needs to be corrected. And for those who are aging, it needs to be corrected as soon as possible, because 0 is the amount of time that the adoptees have left. And in my very last slide then, sorry, not quite the last, I want to emphasize that the adoptees can go forward with the documentation that they have. They have a 2-state issued documents, which is more than any Greek American born in the US. They have a state issued adoption act that passed through the courts back in the day, and they have a state issued baby passport. For people of the 1950s and 60s, it cannot be stronger than that. These documents, which they have, should actually be acknowledged, rather than insisting that these adoptees come up with birth certificates which they may not have, and with other information which they may not have. You cannot, after all, hold a 2-week-old child responsible for the accuracy of their documents. Not even a 14-year-old child, I'd say, because some traveled at that age as well. And one more slide, please. So here is what an adoption act looks like, a small piece of it. And it says that the Greek state wants the responsibility for the adopted person who has the Greek nationality. So the Greek adoptees have an adoption act in which the state back then insisted that they should have the authority of enacting, putting in practice the adoptions of its citizens. What more do you want to actually see the state taking responsibility for its adoptees? The Adoption Act and the Greek passport, the blue passport, the crown and the cross, because we're before 74, it couldn't be more authentic. Mary has one of those. And another slide, please. This is my sum up slide that the Greek state should, after all these years, work with the documentation that the adoptees have, that clearly indicating a pathway that is not one of obstructionism, but an expedited way forward. And the closing slide. Here is our play on the 3 refrigerators and a washing machine, which we were able to open in London not so long ago as part of our awareness raising campaign. And in a final slide, I have some bibliography for you. There is a book out by the Australian Danai Andrea Konidaris, who talks about citizenship by descent in general terms, but not specific to adoptees, but I want to put it out there because it's an important resource. There's a video you can access by Katerina Uli, who talks about citizenship and what has changed over time. And then also I've published 2 recent articles and chapters, which if anybody is keenly interested, you can request and I'll send to you. But there's clearly bibliography about this. We're not working in a void. That's all I have, and I'm eager to hear my fellow panelists and also engage with our audience and with Lou in questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gonda. If just briefly, if you can explain to the audience what 4,000 adoptees meant in the United States in terms of the population of Greece at the time and the other orphans that were brought in, and some of the tragic circumstances of those adoptees being brought over, some of them illegal.
Sure, that is true. Back then, the Greek population was about 7.5 million. In fact, the Greek population didn't change much during the 1940s, which is an indication of just how traumatic those 1940s were and how many people lost their lives. So Greece let go of about 4,000 people, and the ages ranged from 2 weeks to 14 years of age. Those who were older clearly had a Greek life, had a language, had a religion, had likes, had dislikes, had a village, had friends. And for those people who were older, the sense of uprooting and being displaced from their families was very poignant. We would normally think that most people came from orphanages. They're always labeled orphans, but that is a misleading term because a whole lot of unwed mothers gave up children because of the strong taboos that rested on unwed motherhood back then. An unwed mother had no way of supporting herself, very often didn't have the support of her family, and ended up giving up the child. But a good number of children also are legitimate children. And I hate the distinction between legitimate and illegitimate. And were given up by parents, by married couples who thought that they were giving up their child for an extended period of time, but not permanent, to go and study in the US, that the child would be returned to them, would be educated, and were actually somewhat misled about what adoption entailed. And here is where we see the most tragic circumstances, because the adoptees felt abandoned by their very own families. And the families themselves only later realized what it was that they had done: a confidential adoption, records closed, no contact forever after. Very problematic.
Thank you so much, Gonda. I just had a discussion with Lou Raptakis, who's flying over from Patra back to the United States. He was trying to get on the airplane to try to get into this particular video, but it's not going to work. But he does have a statement that he wanted me to convey. Let me just discuss a little bit about Lou Raptakis. He became the first Hellenic American state senator elected in Rhode Island and has won re-election 4 times. And throughout his public service career, he has been a staunch supporter of both Hellas and Cyprus. During his time in the Rhode Island legislature, he has helped pass resolutions regarding the Pontian genocide, recognizing the Hellenic roots of Macedonia, a peaceful solution to the Cyprus problem, and safeguarding the ecumenical patriarchate by urging Turkey to respect the rights and religious freedoms of the patriarchate, and also to reopen the theological school of hockey. Most importantly, Lou Raptakis took over the helm of the World Inter-Parliamentary Association, which is international in scope, and it relates to elected legislators throughout the Hellenic diaspora. And as the president, he wants to expand his mission, obviously. He represents in the organization hundreds of legislators, not only from the United States, but also from Canada, Australia, and other countries around the world. His statement to me was basically to tell the audience that they are drafting the appropriate correspondence, which will be presented to the Prime Minister of Greece, as well as to all the state or national parliamentarians who are in Greece, basically in support of what is we're trying to accomplish right here, to grant citizenship expeditiously to those adoptees who, through no fault of their own, were brought to the United States and who want to be recognized as to what they are, their birthright, to be citizens, Hellenic citizens, and to be accomplished before they pass away. As Gonda mentioned, many of them are in their 70s, some are in their 80s, and they really want that recognition of where they came from, and to finally find Nostos, Our next panelist, I'm pleased to introduce, is Chris Kaitson. He has served in his second term now as the Supreme Vice President of AHEPA. Chris was born Emmanuel Zafiropoulos in Greece. His mother passed shortly after his birth, and he was adopted in Hellas at the age of 2 by a family in Indiana. After college, Chris moved from Indiana to Houston, Texas, where he still resides. Chris served 20 plus years on the Board of Trustees of Annunciation Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Houston, Texas, and as its president. He also served as chairman of the Houston Greek Festival. And over his career, he has served on the boards of numerous charities, including the Alley Theater of Houston, the Houston Ballet, the United Way Gulf Coast, and the American Heart Association of Houston. Chris met his wife, Angie, in church, and they have 2 children and have been married for 44 years. Chris is now retired, and his primary hobby is serving as an AHEPA volunteer. But he also enjoys, of course, golf, skydiving, scuba diving, sports, the beach, and traveling, which he has done a lot of as a member of the AHEPA Supreme Lodge over the past 6 years. And Chris has been everywhere recently, a good friend, and I'm honored to introduce him. Thank you for being with us, Chris.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you. It's always a pleasure. And, I appreciate the opportunity coming back for the second portion of this, because there are some more information I'd like to, share with folks, both some happy, some sad, some positive, some negative. But I think it's important to tell our story, because there are some folks that have benefited through the adoptions, folks that have suffered, folks that are happy, folks that are sad. And I think that's part of what we're sharing today. So I have a sister that's a year older than I am, and we're both born in Greece, both born of the same parents. We were both put up for adoption at the same time when our mother died. I was adopted. It took about 2 years later for me to be adopted. She was not adopted at that time. She was adopted 10 years later. Okay, so for 10 years, 10 additional years, she lived in Greece. But at that point in time, she was adopted by the same family in Indiana that adopted me. So during that whole time period, she continued to live there. We have significant differences in health, size. She's very petite and short, and has gone through many, many issues. Gonda mentioned the blue passport. I have one of those. I'm one of those little 2-year-old kids that have that. I still have the sandals that I wore when I came over to the United States for the first time. But there's been some changes since our last presentation, if you will. I've actually recently filed my papers with Greece for citizenship. Okay, that's occurred in the past few months. I was able to go back and actually find my court proceedings in Greece, in Athens, where I was adopted. In addition to finding that, I was able to find my Greek draft notice. So they knew where I was adopted. They knew who I was adopted by. So at the age of 18, they actually sent a draft notice to Indiana, to my adopted parents over in Indiana. So I was able to have some of the information and papers, which has been beneficial to me. So the 10-year difference between my adoption and my sister's being 1 year apart was a true struggle for her, for many things, not only financially, but also health-wise. She has been through more health issues, probably because of malnutrition and the challenges they had during that time period, that I have not bless my heart and thank you, that I have not been forced to go through. She's been through a couple of brain aneurysms, has had 20 years of battling cancer back and forth. So am I thankful that I was adopted? Absolutely. And is she thankful that she's adopted now? Definitely, we both are. We've been given opportunities in the United States that we did not have otherwise, or we would not have had otherwise. But we're also blessed that we've been able to know where we're from, know our family, and go back and make contact with those folks. And we've had some good times together, and we've had some rough patches together with that. Most recently, we have, as they say in Greek, halasime. We have gone our separate ways for reasons that really don't impact this discussion. But the folks that are looking for citizenship and looking for their family need to know that there are some very heart-wrenching stories that you'll hear, and there's some happy times finding them, and there's some very satisfying times finding your family and making connections, and then there's some really heartbroken times. It's very difficult to go through an adoption, and perhaps your adopted parents pass, and then you make connections with folks back in Greece, and you, quote, have a new family, and then all of a sudden those ties are severed for one reason or another. So the folks that are proceeding down this path, I wish them the best of luck. And last time we talked, I offered as vice president to go with Gonda and Mary to Greece. Opportunity came, and I still offer that. I'd be glad to participate with you in any process that you think I would benefit the group that's seeking their naturalization. So I'm here to be of assistance and help people, but I want folks to know that there's positive and negative, sad, happy, but for all purposes, I'm very fortunate where I am today, and I'd like to give back in whatever way I can to some of those folks that maybe are seeking to make connections.
Thank you so much, Chris. One of the things that's very important, obviously, is Chris, you represent the largest Hellenic American organization that exists by far. And obviously there's a connection with this whole orphanage or adoptee issue and the AHEPA. A lot of the people are not as fortunate or lucky as you are in terms of being able to apply for their citizenship, as you mentioned. I mean, they were looking also for me, by the way, when I reached 18 in the village to find out where I was. And everybody said, well, he left when he was like, 4 years old. Chris, I'm not putting any pressure on you. I think one of the things that we'd like to talk about, not right this second, obviously, because we have other panelists, but maybe in the open discussion, is we need AHEPA to step up, the largest organization in the United States, to help in this particular scenario with regards to not to find fault of what happened in the past, but basically to help those that came to the United States with the Hellenic government and those appropriate people to speak to make them understand that the largest institutions that exist within the United States are all for the Hellenic government doing the right thing and processing and helping expedite, in particular, the citizenship of adoptees. I think it's something that's definitely positive for the organization and something that we should pursue. Gonda made a statement. I'm not sure if that's something that would be accepted in terms of national, conferences and all the rest of that type of stuff. But I think as a separate discussion, we should talk about that separately, perhaps, and see what we can do to make everybody understand that we're all in it together. It's all about supporting Hellenic Americans, in particular, children who, in many cases, under bad circumstances, came to the United States. Not everybody had, the golden life and opportunities when they came here. So this is something we'll pursue. I will say to the audience that part of the reason why I started to discuss the orphans, and I think Gonda actually grabbed me a few years ago, had to do with genealogy, actually, because on one of those genealogy let's say posts, somebody mentioned something about AHEPA, orphans, etc., and it kind of ticked me off. I got to be honest with you, because at the time, I'm not sure. I think I was the president of the chapter and maybe even the governor of New York, of the largest district in AHEPA. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Even if these things happen, first of all, nobody in AHEPA knows what you're talking about, and second of all, what do they, how are they responsible for it? So that's how the conversation started, actually, for everybody who's interested in how I got involved in this. And then Gonda reached out to me and said, hey, listen, we got to talk, blah, blah, blah. And we started to have these particular discussions. So I became, I'm not going to say a convert, because I don't convert, but I became a convert in supporting the adoptees. Okay, this is something that we have fought for. This is the fourth, actually, even though this is the second Nostos forum. This is something that we had 4 different discussions on, and I think it's time. I think it's time for all of us to get together and push the Hellenic government to do what they're supposed to do. It's not about what happened in the past, as Gonda indicated. The past is the past. We now have to support these adoptees with all the organizations we can and do the best we can. Thank you, Chris, for being with us. It's really very important that you're here.
Maybe
please. Yeah, please.
The things you echoed, I totally agree with. And that's why I've been supportive of that. I've been very fortunate, and I understand there are other folks out there that have more challenges. I've gone through the ancestry. I found cousins and found other family members, been able to confirm where folks were adopted in Australia and relocated to other areas. And I'm not the president of AHEPA, so I don't have the power, if you will, to speak for AHEPA on this. But I can tell you that I'm vice president now, and perhaps in July, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected president, I will then be able to speak for AHEPA and take further actions and probably carry more voice going with you to Greece. Gonda and I have met for lunch in Houston, and we've talked about something, and I'm more than willing to help in any way possible. It's a topic that is something that the convention would be of interest in. I'll talk with our board. My guess is the folks that come to the convention have read some of this, know some of it, but as far as direct personal contact and information and all that, I don't know how much interest there would be there or support, because they're focused on current topics. Right now, raising funds for the flood victims, the fires over in California, the fire victims in Greece, and some of those kinds of things. But I have a personal interest in this, just like Lou does. So personally, yes, I will get involved with you and support it in every way possible.
Well, Chris, thank you for that. And I've mentioned this before, and some people don't quite understand it. But we take an oath, and one thing we cannot do is say negative things about our brothers. Okay, that's something we cannot do, and we will not do. And I don't think people quite understand what I meant by that. But it's something that when you take an oath, you have to proceed with the oath. Having said that, I believe going forward that in fact we can have that discussion, and with AHEPA, and I believe, again, and I know that only one person can speak for the organization. I know that for a fact. So I want to make that clear. But I think going forward that we all should work together and then proceed to do what should be done for the benefit of everyone. With
Let me
Chris, again, thank you. And I don't know if you have comment. Yeah.
I'll just throw that out there as my closing words. We will do that.
Very good, Chris. And thank you again. Thank you so much. Our next panelist is someone that I have known since he was in high school, because I was involved obviously with genealogy and all that. Not that I have anything to do with genealogy, but I like history, as people know. I like to discuss origins. I'm into all that type of stuff. And I remember when Gregory was in high school, and we did the first National Hellenic American Genealogy Conference, and then we had Gregory, who was then a high school student, actually Skype in and really have a whole discussion relating to some genealogy stuff in particular that related to Stephanopoulos. And to George Stephanopoulos and his origins and background and all the rest of that. And then the funny part was when Gregory finished, actually George Stephanopoulos' father, Father Stephanopoulos, who's now passed away, was in the audience. Actually, he was kind of shocked at the whole conversation. And then I shocked Gregory by introducing the father of the person that he did a genealogy study. So thank you, Gregory, for being with us. Gregory is the founder and director of Greekancestry. He's come a long way, by the way, a Greek genealogy company based in Athens. Since its foundation in 2020, Greekancestry has been recognized as the leading Greek genealogy organization at an international level, with a long list of collaborations with companies, organizations, TV shows, all types of stuff. The Greekancestry team offers professional Greek genealogy services, including archival research, translations, DNA analysis, assistance with citizenship applications, ancestry trips, etc. And at the same time, Greekancestry is committed to a record preservation and accessibility through digitization and indexing projects throughout the country. Currently, the Greekancestry database consists of almost 2 million records, or approximately 8 million names. Several new collections are expected to be released by the end of 2025. Among its various archival projects, Greekancestry has undertaken the task of cataloging, digitizing, and preserving thousands of adoption folders of the International Social Service Hellenic branch. Gregory holds degrees in history from the University of Athens and the University of Leiden, and currently is a PhD candidate at the University of Athens. His academic work focuses on the history of migration, nationalism, and religion. Welcome, Gregory, and I'm happy, and the audience should know that we also contributed to this digitization of the adoptive records. Thanks again, and thank you for being with us today, Gregory.
Thank you very much, Lou, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with this amazing panelists today. So about adoptions and adoption research, my first contact with this issue was through my clients who were interested in finding their Greek roots. They knew they were adopted, but they were looking for their biological parents. So every time we get a case like that, the first thing we ask is, if the person has taken a DNA test. And Gonda mentioned that at the beginning. People take DNA tests in order to find DNA matches, people with whom they share some DNA, they are relatives. So this is, I would say, the first problem, because not many people in Greece have taken tests, and very few are those who will be willing to take a test if you ask them to. If you get a match and you want to confirm, if you come from a specific family, it's not very easy to convince the family to take, 1 and 2 or 3 tests in order to find who the missing matches and missing relatives are. The second issue, before I get to the third one, the second issue is people in Greece are still viewing this issue as a taboo. Okay, so even when we get very close to finding birth parents, mouths don't open. There is a very specific case I have in mind in which we know who the father is, okay, of an adoptee, and we can't say because the family they don't want to help. They don't want to recognize that. They don't want to get us in touch with the person, okay? So we're stuck for years, all right? Now, the third issue, which is primarily why I'm here today, is archival accessibility. And this is very, very important. I got involved in this back in 2022 when I was approached by the director of the International Social Service Hellenic branch, Mrs. Economou, who asked me to help them digitizing their archival collection. Their collection consists of thousands of folders or files of Greek adoptees, and I will try to share my screen real quick with you guys to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, you should be able to see this and to view this. So ISS Hellenic branch, it was founded in 1924. And from the beginning, it focused on child protection and interstate social matters, okay? Today, it specializes in cross-country child protection and adoptions, roots research, consultative support of cross-cultural families. It's the only recognized and certified service for this kind of thing in Greece. Since the 1950s, when this kind of adoption we're talking about today started to take off, the ISS managed a significant percentage of those cases. So if we're talking about, 5,000, 4,500 cases total, I think that ISS must have managed about 25% of that, maybe. Gonda must know better. We're talking about thousands of files of people who were adopted, people who asked to adopt, and people who were asked for adoption, but the adoption did not happen eventually. So there's a variety of files in there. From 1953 through 1985, we're talking about 1,500 files, which is a significant number. This is the condition of ISS's archive when we were asked to work with it. Okay, you see, we're talking about files that are just packed. Some of them are labeled, some of them are not. They're not in any type of order or preservation. So this is what we've been doing for the past few months. We have been cataloging. We are putting the files in order. We place them in special archival boxes that are acid-free. They're perfect for preservation. And we turn this archive from a mess into something organized, accessible, and something where that can be used for any adoptees research, but also by researchers like Gonda and others who are interested. I will show you some things that we have found in these folders, like real quick, to give you an idea. So these are folders, files of adoptees. We have hidden the names, we've hidden the faces because that's not allowed. Each file consists of approximately 50 to 60 pages, which is a lot, and they may include, from photos of the babies to the adoption decrees, passports, photos of the biological family, photos of the adoptive family, correspondence between biological family and ISS and adoptive, reports of social workers, doctors, anything you can imagine, postcards, whatever. Here are some examples. You see on the right, this is the ticket, Olympic Airlines, the first airlines of Greece, a ticket of an adoptee. We have that in the ISS files. On the left, you see this drawing by an adoptee. It was sent by the adoptive family back to Greece to ISS so that they can, follow up on the case and show the ISS how well, the kid is adjusting to the new environment. More, these are from newspapers and magazines in the States that had, written about adoptions of Greek children, and these are photos of Greek children and their adoptive families, all from ISS archives. Here again, you see that little boy in Fustanella getting down from the plane, and then another baby on the left. Last May, we had a beautiful event at the Demos Center with great help from Mary and Gonda. It was a very informative event. We were able to display some of the archival items that ISS preserves. And on the top right corner, you can see many of the blue passports that were issued for children that had to travel to the US to be adopted. So, if Chris has one, if Mary has one, ISS has dozens of these passports, which can be used in many cases to help to support adoptees in claiming their Greek citizenship. Right now, we are doing a crowdfunding campaign to keep going with this project, to digitize more. There is more to digitize. A couple of weeks ago, we found about 50 folders that nobody knew about, 50 new files. Nobody knew about those. They had been stored previously in the wrong place. So there is more. And all this archival material does not only need to be preserved and cataloged. We need to find ways to make it more accessible, more visible. There is so much history in there, and we do need to communicate this. And that was my final slide. That was quick. So Lou, if you have any questions.
No, I think you're doing a great job. How much more work do you have? In other words, I know you have a whole bunch of, you got some funds, I think Mary contributed, our organization obviously contributed, and some others. Tell us where you are with those records now, and what do you have to do going forward?
So we have digitized, I would say, 70%, 75% of the collection up to 1985. We set 1885 as a cutoff year. So obviously we would need to do the rest as well, ideally. There are also files that have to do with more welfare matters and child protection in Greece. So children in Greece, that were ill in the Peloponnese and someone need to take care of them. So ISS mediated. And then the ISS needs equipment. They need computers. They need, cabinets and closets to keep the records safe. We're not there yet, and that needs to be done. We are right now setting up an archival policy in order to make the collection accessible to researchers. But, that's not just a policy. You need more resources, you need more staff to make this not only available, but also, feasible and efficient to be done. So we still have a way to go until we reach a good, not ideal, but a good, situation.
Gregory, once we have the records reasonably put in place for accessibility, an individual orphan, how will they be able to access the records? Because I imagine there's a lot of sensitivities to these particular records. Are you going through right now the process of how that happens if someone was an orphan, basically, and wants to research if their records actually exist?
So any adoptee has the right to access their record. That's Greek law, okay? In every record, however, in every file, there is not only personal data of the adoptee, but also personal data of the biological family, of the social worker. So depending on the case, a social worker needs to, determine what's showable to the adoptee and what's not. When it comes to researchers, eventually I think we are trying to, find all the regulations, the GDPR, the new EU laws regarding sensitive personal data, so that research can be done with no problem, even within personal data, but with the highest safety, regulations and standards.
If someone at the appropriate time is going for their citizenship, I imagine they will have the ability to access those records as proof, proof of who they are. Okay.
And since ISS, is a very recognized organization, ISS could also, issue certificates that a file does exist for this adoptee. So not just copies, but certificates, something more official that could be used at the citizenship office.
That's great. Thank you, Gregory. We'll come back to some of these questions when we have the open discussion. Our next panelist, a good friend. I saw her a few days ago, actually, at Athens. It was really great to see her. It's, of course, Mary Cardaras. She holds a doctorate in public and international affairs and is the founder and director of the Demos Center of the American College of Greece, where she helps to strengthen democracy by promoting active citizenship. She is a Greek-born adoptee, baby number 44488, and from an institution in Athens in 1955. She launched the petition Nostos for Greek Adoptees, and I think earlier on I showed actually that that link. If you can, Costa, just bring it up again for a second. No, not yeah. That's exactly right. Okay, we'll come back to this. But when Mary launched this, we hit. Mary will describe it obviously more than I will. But they've gathered over 75,000 signatures from all over the world, and has been working with a team for that campaign, which is advocating for restoring citizenship for Greek adoptees and open adoption records. She wrote for, edited, and curated the book, Voices of the Lost Children of Greece, which you see right there in front of you, and Ripped at the Root, which is right there, from loving parents in Greece for 42 years. She is a journalist who writes often for Katharimini and continues to produce documentaries. Her latest novella, a work in progress, is called The Village, which explores identity and the longing in all of us for reconnection. Thank you, Mary, for being with us again, and it's always great to see you.
Great to see you too, Lou. Again, come back to Greece soon. Kalispera from Paleophalliro in Athens. I want to thank Lou sincerely, as always, for these EMBCA virtual gatherings and on a variety of topics, but especially for the attention you have brought to the issue of citizenship for Greek adoptees. And I'll emphasize it's the restoration of citizenship for Greek adoptees. I want to thank my adoptee brothers and sisters for all they have done in this effort. I want to thank Gonda van Steen, because without her, this history of ours and all that has happened since would not have come to light. I want to particularly thank Dina Poulias, who was a stolen baby. You brought up the book, Lou, called Ripped at the Root. She was an extraordinary case. I want to thank her for sharing her story with me, and to all of those who have written to relive their painful stories, who have appeared in interviews on television, on the radio, in print. You all have been heard and your voices have mattered. That said, right now, someone hit the pause button for us. I don't know why. I don't understand it, but we are paused. Our campaign and our petition, called Nostos for Greek Adoptees, launched in November of 2023. We have gathered to this night, in particular, 75,130 signatures. They are signatures from all over the world, adoptees and our supporters. The petition began pitifully slow, by the way, but one night a friend called and said, something is happening with your petition. It literally exploded overnight. It went from something like 75 people to 2,000 and then into the thousands. Since that time, since November of 2023, we have written tirelessly, and we have had meetings with journalists, activists, lawyers, and those in government. I was quite honored to be included in a meeting Gonda was granted with the Prime Minister, and that meeting honestly could not have gone better. Gonda will attest to this. He was extremely warm, welcoming, and friendly, and gracious. He was absolutely fascinated by my old blue passport, the one most of us had when we left the country. In fact, he was holding it and leafing through it. And, my blue passport is 70 years old and in very good condition. And he was very moved by it, I thought. In that meeting was also the new Minister of the Interior and someone instrumental from the Citizenship Office. Gonda mentioned her, Mrs. Uli. The Prime Minister could not have been clearer with us. We are doing this, he said. All those with blue passports go first. Those without, but with enough paperwork to prove identity, would be next. And those foundlings who have little to no paperwork, or like Dina Poulias, whose adoption was illegal and who has fake documents, those adoptees will be given citizenship on trust, meaning that identity and an adoption can somehow be proved. He said it was simple, and he said it should be done quickly. He promised a draft to a new law to this end, and that would be processed through the Parliament with ease, he said. We hugged, and as the Prime Minister left the meeting, he said he would look forward to giving out passports in person and to welcoming the adoptees home. As Gonda said, that meeting happened in September 2024. We were promised that the first test cases would be put through by November 17th, 2024. In the meantime, I very deliberately and immediately published a social media post about the PM's promise. And before I posted it, I ran it by his office because I wanted the office to be, and him, to be comfortable with it. They were. Also, almost immediately after, I wrote an article entitled "The Prime Minister and Me" in the National Herald, which I wanted as an instant record of our meeting with the Prime Minister and his promise to us. I sent it also to the Prime Minister's office before it was published, and the office said it had no problem with it. Tonight, we are still waiting for the Prime Minister to follow through on his promise, and it is March of 2025. I hate to say it, but right now the government here can't seem to do several things at the same time. This should have been done then. And I'll quote the Prime Minister. He said, "It is not complicated." Had it been done then, it would have been such a great gesture, not to mention terrific PR for the Prime Minister, a no-brainer, as he himself called it then. Now there are really serious political issues here. Number one, the terrible train wreck 2 years ago, where honestly, no one has been held accountable, and the trains here are still not safe. And the political standoff between Europe and the US now, with our NATO alliance being threatened. Those are taking the government's and the Prime Minister's attention away from us. That said, though, the citizenship office here is operational, and our paperwork should go through that office, not sent back to consulates and through lawyers. Again, that was the Prime Minister's directive. My appeal now tonight is to every Greek abroad who has any influence. Greeks in government, both state and national, in the US, in Canada, in Australia. Lean on the government here to get this done, and get it done before processing the citizenship applications of those not born here, but entitled to it by extension. Greek organizations, with Lou and Honda, I will again appeal to AHEPA's sense of justice. It was involved in sending Greek babies to the US. We are very passionately and purposefully asking that it acknowledge the history and to help us now by pressuring the government here to process the applications of Greek adoptees here in Athens. There are Philoptochos chapters all over the world, all over the country, in the US, and churches all over the world, priests and parishioners. It would be great for you to advocate for us, with us. We are asking for something restored that was ours to begin with. It has been a long road, and there is still work to do. Lou and Honda know I am an eternal optimist, and I, for one, am going to keep working until this is finished. Nostos for Greek adoptees. We are called the lost children of Greece, and I will consider us as such until we are symbolically found with citizenship in hand, fully restored to our country, the Hellenic Republic. Like Chris, and in closing, I also experienced a very successful adoption and inherited a large, wonderful family. But I had a life before them, however short it was, and that has little to do, per se, with my deep connection to Greece and to my birth family. That life before needs to be honored and considered in who I am, like every other adoptee. Thank you for your time. Thanks for including me, Lou. And you're a great panel, and thank all of you for being here tonight as well.
Thank you. Just a question, Mary and Gonda. I mean, we'll open it up now, and anybody can ask whatever they want. But where did the Greek government leave it with you? In other words, the Prime Minister made certain statements. Did he assign it to some personnel, etc., that were supposed to carry it through? Or what was what was the final scenario? Who are you connecting with over there with the bureaucracy? Who's involved with this?
We had a plan right there and then on the 17th of September. Livanios was present, the current Minister of the Interior, and also Mrs. Katerina Uli, who is, from what I understand, the second in command at the Citizenship Office. The plan was that they actually asked us, do you know these adoptees? We said, yes, we know them. We can contact them at short notice. This is not the problem. Absolutely not. We know who they are. We can even vouch for them. And so we proposed that we would collect the Adoption Act and the passport of as many people as we could gather up and package those by way of PDFs and send them on. And internally, we decided that the people who have severe health challenges should go first. And this is not about who has priority, who's more worthy. We can all agree on the fact that urgent cases should be dealt with even more urgently. So that they asked us to send over the first batch, and they were going to look at those by the middle of November and make a decision on those. And then with each batch, it would be easier because for them, this would be a process also of educating themselves on what adoptees have. And we would be on standby to answer questions. And we also volunteered that for the people who don't have anything, who lost their paperwork or had their paperwork destroyed or lost in a natural disaster, we also offered that we could vouch for these people because we know them, we've heard their story, we know where they may have other records that are not necessarily the Adoption Act or the passport, like for instance a file, a huge correspondence about them at the office of the ISS, the material that Gregory digitized. So we laid it out for them that there are easy cases with incontestable evidence, and then there is probably a few cases that require a little more work, and then for the people who have absolutely nothing, there is a leap of trust to be made, which the Prime Minister also said, yes, this is a matter of goodwill. We're not here to be suspicious of bad people. We have to be willing to make that leap of trust if people don't have the necessary evidence. And that we set that plan in motion immediately. This first group was collected literally in a matter of days. The answer would come in mid-November, and then that answer never came.
Did they respond at all? They
say they're working on it. I've offered help. I've offered seminars. I've offered to stand by. I've offered grant money because I could apply for a scheme here called Research England. I sometimes wonder if they're a little afraid of. We bring a lot of passion to it. We also bring a lot of knowledge to it. This is rather unknown territory to the people who've seen a lot of citizenship applications, but not from adoptees. And there is a little bit of a hesitation as to who are these people? Is this going to open a can of worms? Is this Pandora's box?
Have they said that?
No,
or not really?
No. Well, there was one comment at that meeting that shouldn't be repeated, but it was clear that the Prime Minister had at that meeting, no patience, let's say, for any negative comments. His mind was positive and forward-looking.
Have we written to the Prime Minister and asked him what's happening?
We have done that, indeed. We have done that.
And nothing?
What tends to happen in Greece, Lou, is that there are always issues that are more urgent. 2 days ago, we saw one of those issues that was more urgent, and perfectly, legitimately so. But you cannot call a cause that has been pending for 75 years never urgent, right? At some point, this has to be.
Well, listen, I think that's just BS, that there are urgent things that come up. There's urgent things come up all the time. I think that you can walk and chew or whatever if you're a government, rather than go one issue at a time. So that logic doesn't make any sense to me. But you have not heard back. You have not heard back from the Prime Minister indicating anything, is what you're saying.
We get the message that they're working on it, but on the other hand, that first batch of people has not heard back. including the people who, because of health challenges, for whom this is getting really urgent. And that's painful. That's painful.
I also want to say that this meeting, this was not a situation where the prime minister was sitting back in a chair and saying, okay, give me your pitch. I have 10 minutes. That was not this. He was on the edge of his chair and he was leaning into us. He was clearly engaged and focused in this conversation. And he gave us every indication that he was going to do this. It couldn't have been more clear. And Honda said before we went in, gee, you know, he's seen us. I wonder what this is about. And I said he would not be wasting his time unless he had made a decision. And he had made a decision. Mm-hmm. But there was radio silence for a very long time, nothing. And then some emails weren't even being answered. And then I think we got a very promising email maybe a few weeks ago that said there was movement, but what does that even mean? And again, the key is these people should not have to go back to the consulates. And the prime minister said this needs to be done here. They shouldn't be paying lawyers. This should be streamlined and easy here in Athens. So,
well, I will say one thing to your point. The consulates are trying to evade. Everybody's trying to make applications. You know, the consulates are so far behind, and people are so ticked off in terms of their applications that it's understandable that if the adoptees had to go through the consulates, I hate to say this, most would be dead by the time anything took place. So obviously,
Agreed.
Obviously, what you're saying has to be the approach. It has to be a different approach, and absolutely not through the consulates, okay? Because they have demonstrated, unfortunately, a failure, and it's correct. A lot of people get their citizenship by going to attorneys, paying $10,000, who do the paperwork, which is all BS, by the way. I mean, the paperwork is not that difficult for non-adoptees, let's say, not that difficult that it couldn't be processed by the government. I think I've mentioned it more than once, but I'll mention it again. You know, I was born in Greece. My parents were both Greek, etc. I had all the paperwork, whatever. I had my blue passport. I had all this stuff. And it took me literally years to get my passport. And in the beginning, I was so frustrated that I felt like many people, because I've talked to a lot of people who gave up after years of trying to get their Greek passport. They gave up. Me, I took the approach, you know what? I hate to use this terminology, but I basically said to myself, screw you. I'm going to continue to just hang out and just keep processing the thing, whatever excuse you come up with. You know, I'm just going to be there. And finally, obviously, I got it. But getting back to the adoptees for a second, they're not in a similar situation. Exactly. They're not in a similar situation. So what we have to do, and part of what was taking place before is a lot of articles were written about this, obviously, about the adoptees, and it was in the press, etc. I think we have to start thinking about restarting the process a little bit more aggressively and just say that the adoptees have basically been forgotten. Promises were made, promises were broken. It's a sensitive time right now. We don't want to do it because the government is under a lot of pressure, in particular with Tempe, as you know, with the demonstrations of hundreds of thousands of people out in the streets. But I think we have to get a little bit more aggressive. I like the fact that Lou Raptakis and the World Inter-Parliamentary Association has agreed to get involved in this. And I'm going to press Lou, actually, when he comes into the United States, to stop screwing around and get a letter put together that he can basically send to not only the prime minister but basically the parliamentarians. This is a topic that's extremely important and that has to be solved. And I think with bureaucrats in general, if no one is pressing them, they just hang out. They think they're going to beat you by time. Okay, they're going to beat you by time. So we're open.
So Lou,
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I'm actually traveling over to Greece in April with a delegation of AHEPA folks, and we do have a tentative meeting planned with the Prime Minister. So I will do the agenda to bring it up at that point in time, the best I can, assuming he wants to talk about it and all. So I'll report back after that.
Chris,
Thank
that,
you.
that would
Yes.
be great. Chris, that would be absolutely
Excellent.
fantastic. And I think next time I see Saba, I think I'll mention it to him too, because it's a topic that I haven't brought up with him, but it's something that should be discussed, because I think it's a positive thing. I think this thing is a no-brainer. As far as I'm concerned, it's a no-brainer, because I think it's great for our organizations in the United States. But I think it's also a great thing for the Prime Minister. I mean, this guy's been beat up left and right. I mean, it would be fantastic for him to come and say he did something that was different.
Yeah, it's a win.
I mean, if you think of it, this is an issue that can only create goodwill, that sets something right, that doesn't cost any money. The work is already done. The publicity is feel-good story through and through. All these people are driven by a desire, not Greece owes me something, but how can I go back to my first identity? How can I give back to the country that gave birth to me? What assets do I have to bring? Can I take my children and grandchildren? Can I settle in my village for a few months and kind of go on a form of like mild tourism? These are not the people who will increase the numbers on Santorini in the summer. They want to do something different in Greece. They're the people of slow tourism, slow reintegration, language learning, getting to know various areas of Greece, showing it to their grandchildren, investing some money, contributing like Mary is doing. So there is nothing negative about this. This is really an issue presented to a government on a silver plate.
It's amazing we even have to have this discussion. It's just amazing to me, because you have within Greece and other countries, of course, golden visas. Okay, somebody pops in half a million euros or what have you. It was a little bit less before, and all of a sudden they have a pathway to certain things. We talk about the lack of children, the depleting population, the fact that more people die every year in Greece right now that are born in Greece, and you would think that the Hellenic Republic would want to bring in some of its own to help in some of the issues. And Chris, you were going to say something?
No, go ahead.
I do a little calculation sometimes of what a dent did this issue could place into the demographic problem. If every adoptee has 2 children, which is a low number, and they each have 2 children, we're immediately adding close to 40 to 50,000 people and alleviating the demographic problem. But if you're like our friend Nick and have 6 children, there is no end to the dent you can put into this demographic problem. Again, Greece at some point let some of the youngest and healthiest children go away, and has ever since complained about the demographic problem.
It's an amazing country that is, since they had the economic problem, for example, with no opportunities within the country, you had 500,000 people leave, the best and brightest, the youngest, etc. They're never coming back. They're never coming back. So I don't get it. I don't get this whole situation, quite frankly, where I have nothing against people who come from other nations, but it's amazing that you don't want your own. Exactly. It's amazing to me that you have a constitution that was established at a time when, in fact, there were more Hellenic people in the diaspora than existed in the nation itself. It was only in 1923, when they did the exchange of populations, that, in fact, there were more Hellenic people in Greece than outside of Greece. Now, with the demographics that are taking place, which are horrendous, by the way, one would imagine that you want to bring people in. You want to give the citizenship that was guaranteed by the Constitution of the Hellenic Republic from its origins, from its basic beginning. It's just absolutely amazing. Yeah. Chris, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
AHEPA is actually proof of that. The chapters that have grown across Europe, the people from Greece that have relocated to other countries in Europe. It's similar to what occurred back in the 50s and 60s and in the U.S., folks migrating here and bonding. Now we got folks leaving Greece that are bonding in other countries because our membership in Europe is growing.
Well, there's no doubt, and as a matter of fact, obviously the membership not only within the Hellenic Republic itself, which is growing, obviously, and they're getting up into very large numbers right now in Germany and other nations that you travel to, and that I see some of the photos in social media, etc. But there's a lot to be learned here, and there's a lot of interconnections between the nations that could take place with people being granted citizenship, to have an ownership in the country, to learn the language. We always hear that more people have to speak the Hellenic language. We have to promote Hellenism. We have to do this. We have to do that. Hellenism, this and that. Help us internationally. Within the country, politically, etc., to support the Hellenic Republic, support Cyprus, etc. Meanwhile, you deny us the ability to even be a part of this scenario. So I find it like ludicrous. I mean, the whole thing is almost laughable. And again, what's annoying to me is all the politicians, etc., who come to the United States asking for help. Support Greece, invest in Greece, do this in Greece, etc. And when you ask for something simple, like give me my birthright, that they make it difficult for you or almost impossible for you, to get that birthright. It's not right. So I have to congratulate everybody that's here today. Any questions for any of the panelists before we wrap it up? Anybody?
I just wanted to ask Gregory, who's going to be on his way to Rhodes in Utah, which is the big genealogy bonanza. To what extent you can make the adoptee issue visible, Gregory?
Okay, that's a good question, because I'm giving a presentation at Rhodes on Thursday, and then another little presentation about Greek records on Friday, and then a presentation at the Greek community on Sunday. So that's a lot of opportunities to bring this up. Maybe not at Rhodes itself, because most of the attendants will not be. There will be many internationals, not necessarily Greek, but certainly at the Greek community of Salt Lake. To me, what really matters is, apart from citizenship, to raise awareness about this whole matter, because still, despite your efforts with Mary, despite, your play, there is still so much ignorance in Greece. Almost in every family, there's the story that, a baby was born and they took it away, and none of them really try to get into this, delve into it, search, and find out what's going on. And when you reach out to them, eventually, they are very reluctant. So to me, the real work needs to be done here, not in the diaspora, but here. And it would be, as Lou said, it would be a great opportunity finally for Greece to prove that there is some reciprocate giving between the country and the diaspora, and it's not only one way.
Well, Gregory, I'm not disagreeing with you, but the reality is, if you leave it only to there, it's never going to happen. Okay, that's just my opinion. It's an opinion. It's an opinion, because without any pressure, there's no need for them to do anything different. Okay, and they know what they're doing. Gregory, they know what they're doing. They're on purpose, slow walking this thing, just like they slow walked before. Regular passports, forget about adoptees for a second. Regular passports, they slow walked them. They didn't want to give you a Hellenic passport or Hellenic citizenship. As a matter of fact, within Athens, the government didn't even do it. They had farmed this out to another group that was analyzing everything to figure out who would get a passport and who wouldn't. If you had what we call in Greek tamesa, you knew people, etc., politicians, etc., you can get a passport within 24 hours. Okay, that's the way it works. Okay, if you don't have the mesa, it takes a long time. Now, me, I had the message. I could have spoken to people directly and asked them, hey, do me a favor. I want my passport. I didn't want to do that, okay? Because why should that happen? Why should I ask for the message? Why should I go to consular generals or ambassadors and say to them, you know what? Please process my paperwork. People have done that. I know people have done it. Like within a short period of time, they get their passport. Is that right? Is that right? I don't think it's right. So, if it's coming
all
from
for
Greece,
pressure. I agree.
listen, if it's coming from Greece, it's not happening, in my opinion. There's got to be pressure. There's got to be discussions. There's got to be at the top. They've got to figure out what to do because no one wants to give you a passport. They're afraid. They're afraid for many reasons. You say like, oh, why are they afraid? Okay. Some relative may come on board and say, hey, you know what? The relatives that are there would say a relative may come on board and come to the property that I got and all of a sudden demand that they get part of the property because they were children of that particular person. It may sound stupid to most people, but the Hellenic mind thinks that way. Believe me.
Yeah.
And a lot of other tricky type things.
Yeah. Well,
right.
I won't disagree, but I mean, in Greece, you have this feeling that, the political system has no idea. They have no idea what's going on in Greece in the first place, but they have no idea what's going on beyond Greece's borders. They don't know the diaspora. They have no idea. They think the diaspora is, a bunch of millionaires, billionaires, and that's it. They don't realize that there are people out there who, worship their papus and yayas, right? And they have their pictures, they have their icons, and they are way more supportive of Greece than Greeks here.
That's correct. Yeah.
This is not something that people or politicians in Greece realize.
And that is very true of many, many adoptees.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
love this country and want to be a part of it, despite all the negative things we are saying tonight about it. And that includes me. I'm very happy here. So that's the truth.
Listen, I think Greece is great. I bought an apartment there, as you know. I'm fixing it, what have you. I'm spending my money. They're charging me 24% for everything that I do. I mean, it's ridiculous. So let's wrap it up now. I'm going to start with Gonda. Your final thoughts, any comments?
Yes, I want to take away from this discussion the word expedited. We were promised expedited treatment for the adoptees. We care for expedited. We can help deliver it. I really hope that we can refocus on an expedited Nostos. But I also want to thank Chris for offering to put this issue on the AHEPA agenda, to bring it to 2 meetings. And I see potential here for, if the AHEPA can be convinced to make a donation to Gregory's, what Gregory is shepherding on behalf of the adoptee files. A small donation goes a long way and helps restore something of the history and of the records that these adoptees will need to make that, on their side, to make that expedited Nostos possible as well.
Thank you, Gonda. Chris, some final thoughts, ideas, concepts?
Gregory, I'll get your contact information. AHEPA will be making a donation to you. I can't commit to the amount, but you will be receiving a donation. So I pursued parallel paths, and I was remiss in not saying that. I'm part of the bundle, Gonda, of passports that were sent over during the September, October time period. But I did parallel paths with folks working through the AHEPA organization, through an attorney over there. So I'm going 3 different paths at once, hoping that approval.
Good for you. Good for you.
But one basket.
But it shouldn't be necessary, but good for you.
Yeah, I think the panel is wonderful, and I hope we just continue to bring, raise the awareness of this and the significance and the sensitivity to the folks that are living this every day and that maybe aren't as fortunate as us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'd like at the appropriate time to fly into Athens, Mary, Gonda, Chris, Gregory, and we have an event, quite frankly, that relates to this whole topic. And as Mary and Gonda said, where people are given their passports, right on the spot. But if that doesn't happen anyway, I think we should coordinate an event maybe during the summer where we can have this discussion, etc., with a larger audience. face to face, and have this topic if in fact things don't work out by that particular time. I will coordinate with Lou Raptakis and see when the World Inter-Parliamentary Association will be in Athens.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
great.
that would be a great time to have representatives, if in fact nothing happens by then, coordinate something while they're there, where we have an event while all these representatives from all around the world can listen to some of the things that we're talking about right now. And I think that will be very important if nothing has happened since then, and make it a big deal. In other words, elevate it to the appropriate level where it hits the papers, etc. People are wondering, like, what's going on after X amount of months where promises were made and promises were not kept. Hopefully, they will be kept before then. Gregory, some final thoughts, ideas, concepts.
No,
I know you're going to
thank
take a long trip, so
Yeah.
before you get tired, give us your wisdom.
Right. No, not much. I appreciate being here, meeting Chris. I did not know him, in person. Um, Please, guys, continue to support the archival effort at the International Social Service. I'm a board member, and I know how well, they handle this money and how committed they are to this effort. So, Chris, I will send you my contact information, and I do hope we can, make progress with this.
Mary, thank you, Gregory, and have a safe trip. Have a safe trip,
Thank you.
man. You got a long trip. Mary, some thoughts, ideas, concepts.
Yep. Chris, thank you very much for any efforts with the AHEPA. We would be eternally grateful for that. Greg, love seeing you in Athens whenever you're at the Demos Center, and thank you for all the great work at the ISS. Honda knows how grateful I am to her. Were it not for her, I wouldn't be me, and I certainly wouldn't be here talking about all of this. And she was the one who told me long ago, you were one of those babies. And Lou, you have a way with words, Lou. You have a way to put this all together. You need to be our front man always in Athens. And the final thing I want to say is I know many adoptees who have had amazing reunions with their families here, and they have homes here, and they come back here, and they can't wait to come back here, and they spend time here. And it is a crime that they are not citizens of their own country, with their parents in many cases who are alive and well in Greece.
Thank you, Mary. And as I indicated, I would like to host an event. If in fact certain things don't happen, but if they happen, maybe I'll host an event anyway, and we can invite obviously all the appropriate people, including the government people, including adoptees, etc. It would be fantastic. Actually, we can have music, Gonda. We can have somebody playing the saxophone like we did the last event we had. I think
yes,
we can have a really great event. To the audience, this has been a fantastic panel. I think a lot was accomplished. I hope you got something out of this. Some of perhaps the frustration that has been taking place, and we need your support, obviously, and we'll always be there for you. Our next event is going to be on the life and legacy of Spiros Skouras, okay, America's most influential Hellenic immigrant. If you ask the common person, who was Spiros Skouras, okay, could they tell you who Spiros Skouras was? But he was probably one of the most important, if not the most important Hellenic American who existed, and who saved Greece, especially in particular Athens with the katochi, with the hunger that took place where tens of thousands were dying. He was instrumental in ending the British blockade of Greece when the Nazis were in Greece, to allow ships to come in with food, to really save what turns out over time to be millions of people. He has not been recognized really for the greatness that he had. And Chris, he was a member of AHEPA, just so you know.
Good man.
Good man, very important man, one of the most important people in the history of the United States. Thank you to the audience, and thank you to all the panelists. You were fantastic. A great topic and something we have to continue to aggressively pursue. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Sign the petition.
Oh, let's put up the petition again.
Yeah, Lou, did you
Thanks,
know
Lou.
that? Did you know that?
Continue to talk, Costa.
Yeah. Lou, did you know that Koraes discovered Marilyn Monroe?
Of course.
And of course, 20th Century Fox and Boy on a Dolphin. He also discovered that you could do fundraisers in the cinema while you have a captive audience. The guy was genius.
The guy was absolutely amazing. And in the next panel discussion, I will have people who wrote books about him, obviously, including writing books from his memoirs.
Yeah,
but also I have various professors who have written about him and the film industry and what he did with regards to the film industry. An amazing individual. Yeah. There we go, everybody. We have 75,000, a little over 75,000 signatures to the petition. You can see this video at any time, so you can always get the link. The issue, obviously, is a letter to the president of the Special Standing Committee of Equality, Youth, and Human Rights of the Greek Parliament and its members. Let's do it. Let's get 85, 95, 100,000 signatures. Thanks again, everybody. Thank you for being with us.
Good night.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Hello,
Thank you.
Gregory. Thank you, everyone.